Chapter 423. Gu Xingyin's expression turned solemn. She asked, "Your Highness, is this news true?" The eldest prince nodded. "This is a spy that I've planted very deeply. There's no mistake about it." Seeing that Gu Xingyin was still deep in thought, he panicked. "General Situ, I can confirm that this news is true. I won't lie to you. My feelings for you." Gu Xingyin lifted her head and said sternly, "Your Highness, please be careful with your words." The eldest prince didn't say anything. He only looked at Gu Xingyin in the video with a melancholic gaze. He liked this woman. Regardless of whether it was for emotional or political reasons, Situ Jin was the woman he liked the most. Even the Situ family was very happy to see their daughter become the princess consort. However, Situ Jin wasn't willing. In the Situ family, no one could order Situ Jin around. If she didn't want to do something, no one could force her to do it. Gu Xingyin wasn't doubting the authenticity of the news. She was communicating with the system to let it verify whether this was true or not. In the super-technological dimension, the system's advantage wasn't as obvious as before. It took almost 2 minutes before it found out what Gu Xingyin wanted. "There are a few battleships hidden around the Star Eagle battleship that the host is in." The eldest prince was still urging. "General Situ, don't hesitate anymore. It'll be too late later." Gu Xingyin suddenly lifted her head, her eyes bright. "No, it's already too late." She suddenly turned on the emergency communication device in her hand. At the same time, all the soldiers on the Star Eagle battleship heard her voice. "Star Eagle battleship, activate level 1 defense. Get ready for battle." The efficiency of an ace troop was extremely high. Almost at the instant they heard the commander's words, everyone reacted. From afar, a layer of blurry light started to appear on the surface of the battleship that was speeding through the galaxy. It was as if a light shield was surrounding the Star Eagle battleship. This was the defensive energy shield of the Star Eagle battleship. Just as the energy shield was raised, a blinding white light suddenly appeared in the darkness and smashed onto the Star Hawk. Looking at the energy shield successfully blocking this fierce attack on the display screen, many people showed lingering fear. If His Excellency had been a second slower, this super-powerful laser cannon would have landed on the Star Hawk. Even if the Star Hawk was made of the best materials in the Imperium, half of the operating system would be destroyed after being hit by such a blow. It was as if in an instant, more than 10 battleships had appeared around the originally empty Star Hawk. Without any warning, several light cannons shot toward the Star Hawk. This time, the soldiers on the Star Hawk knew what to do even without Gu Xingyin saying anything. Gu Xingyin glanced at it and calmly accepted the eldest prince's call, which had rung countless times. The eldest prince's anxious face appeared in mid-air. When he saw Gu Xingyin, he asked, "What happened over there?" Gu Xingyin replied, "It's nothing serious. Your Highness is right. Someone attacked the Star Eagle battleship just now." The eldest prince wanted to say more, but when he saw her calm expression, he felt that it shouldn't be a big problem and didn't ask further. When he received the specific news 1 day later, the eldest prince, who was elegantly sipping his tea, almost couldn't maintain his bearing as a member of the royal family and spat out the tea in his mouth. Being ambushed by 13 level 1 battleships was still considered nothing serious. Chapter 424. Enoch broke through the door and entered. His expression was serious. "Can the Star Hawk hold on?" Gu Xingyin nodded hesitantly. As the command ship of the Violent Lion Army, the Star Hawk's defense is top-notch in the entire galaxy. However, Enoch hit the nail on the head. However, this is a command ship, not a battleship. Without a doubt, the Star Hawk's defense was undeniable. It was hard to find another ship in the entire galaxy that was on par with it. However, in terms of attack power, it was not even comparable to the first-level battleships outside. This meant that they could only passively take a beating and would not be able to launch an effective counterattack. They had to see if they could hold on until reinforcements arrived. The only consolation was that the Star Hawk had sufficient energy. Gu Xingyin estimated the route and said, "We considered the secret at that time. The route that Star Hawk took was very remote. We have already left Storm Planet for 1 day and 1 night, and there are still 2 days before we reach the nearest destination." This meant that even if the other party received the request for reinforcements, they would only meet one day later. Under normal circumstances, the Star Hawk can hold on for 3 days. However, Gu Xingyin's expression was serious. The other party could mobilize 13 first-level battleships. It was impossible that they did not have any backup plans. As expected, on the display screen, the laser cannons on the sides of 2 battleships suddenly changed. 2 faint blue rays of light slowly appeared. Gu Xingyin's expression changed. They even have this. The Empire's SS-level secret. The super-strong plasma beam that the military had just developed a month ago. The military had not even released this weapon. Gu Xingyin could imagine that regardless of whether the attack was successful or not, there would be a huge purge in the military. The other party did not care about the consequences in order to take her life. Gu Xingyin knew the power of the super-strong plasma beam. Among the trump cards developed by the military, its lethality was in the top 3. Enoch saw her expression and knew that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong? What is that?" Gu Xingyin sneered and pointed at the screen. "It's a weapon that even you, the Red Devils, don't know about. It's the result of the military's recent research. Without a doubt, not only is there a mole in my Star Hawk, but there are also many people in the military who want my life." Gu Xingyin already knew who the mole on Star Hawk was. There were probably more than 1 or 2 of them in the military. Gu Xingyin asked the system, and sure enough, Qi Lin had been rescued. The military court is a bunch of good-for-nothings. With so many people watching, it's known as the Iron Wall of the Empire, but they still let a key suspect be rescued. Gu Xingyin scolded. As the 2 of them spoke, even though the Star Hawk tried its best to dodge, there were still many attacks that landed on the ship. The vice-captain's voice came in with a grave expression. "Admiral, the enemy's attack power is beyond our imagination. At this rate, the Star Hawk can only last for 10 hours. Gu Xingyin nodded to indicate that he understood and turned off the communication. "What do you plan to do?" Enoch asked. "It's not that easy to take my life." Gu Xingyin turned to look at Enoch with bright eyes. "Enoch, are you willing to have a real adventure with me?" Enoch loved her confident look no matter what. He smiled and said, "Of course." To be able to have a life-and-death adventure with her, just thinking about it made his blood boil. Chapter 425. In one of the 13 battleships that surrounded the Star Hawk, a man with an aquiline nose looked at the Star Hawk on the screen and laughed coldly. "Citagene, today is the day you die." As long as she died, he would be the greatest contributor to Master. He would wait for Master in the future. The man with the aquiline nose was so agitated that his eyes turned red. It was as if he could see his infinitely beautiful future. He didn't notice that there were some small changes inside the powerful energy shield of the Star Hawk. "General, you can't take this risk." After knowing Gu Xingyin's plan, a few of her trusted subordinates tried to persuade her. "We will go. You stay in the Star Hawk." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "The Star Hawk isn't the safest place now. Trust me." She looked determined, and there was a convincing sense of irrationality in her words. No one could say anything against her. "Are you ready?" she asked the others. Reporting to the general, "We have already made all the preparations." The few of them spoke in unison. Gu Xingyin looked at them one by one. These people were all top-notch experts in the Violent Lion Legion. Their physiques were undoubtedly S-grade existences. Only someone with such a strong physique would be able to withstand the pressure later on. "Good. All of you, prepare yourselves. I will give the order later. I hope that we can successfully meet in the imperial capital." After everyone left, only Enoch and Gu Xingyin remained. Gu Xingyin turned on her communication device and recorded an emotional video. "Your Majesty, I am Citagene. When you see this video, I might have successfully found a way to survive, or I might have already left this world." Enoch was shocked at first, then he understood. He revealed a strange smile as if he didn't expect the iron-blooded General Situ to know how to flirt. Furthermore, from the looks of it, she was very familiar with it. After Gu Xingyin finished recording and clicked to send the video, she saw Enoch's expression. She didn't feel embarrassed and said with a teasing tone, "What's the matter?" I'm just playing a little trick. What's with your expression? Could it be that you think our military only knows how to charge forward? She had purposely sent that video to the emperor, so that he would feel a thorn in his heart after watching it. Since some people in the military dared to do such a thing, they should be prepared to bear the consequences. No. Enoch couldn't help but laugh. Suddenly, he walked forward and fiercely held her waist. Without any explanation, he kissed her. Gu Xingyin froze for a moment, then reached out and hugged his waist, deepening the kiss. After a long time, Enoch finally let go and pressed his forehead against hers. You have to be careful, Gu Xingyin said in a low voice. Don't worry. I'll be fine. You have to be careful too. They all knew that the person who did this was actually very risky. Out of the 8 of them, only a few of them would be able to fulfill the promise of meeting in the imperial capital. Enoch gave her a final hug and walked out without looking back. Gu Xingyin also walked in that direction. She lay down in the cabin and closed her eyes. What's going on? The hook-nosed man's expression froze. He saw the energy shield of the Starhawk suddenly flicker. This wasn't normal. Zoom in on the video. Chapter 426. The man with the aquiline nose looked at the video carefully, and his face turned green. He clearly saw the energy shield on Starhawk close for a moment. Because it was too fast, it only flashed for a moment. The moment the energy shield was shut down, 8 mini-mechs were ejected out of the shield. The speed at that moment was close to the speed of light. It was no wonder they didn't see it. Sir, what should we do? Should we chase after them? Someone asked carefully. Close to the speed of light. Even if the mechas bore most of the pressure, the remaining pressure isn't something an ordinary person can withstand. The man with the aquiline nose said coldly. Situjin is most likely among these mechas. But the subordinate who spoke earlier looked troubled. There are 8 different directions. We can't determine which one to chase. Once we split up, we won't be able to break through Starhawk's defense. Crack. The man with the aquiline nose crushed the cup in his hand. Damn Situjin. He didn't expect Situjin to be willing to take such a huge risk. Although these mechas managed to escape for the time being, the universe was filled with dangers. In order to survive safely, not only did they need to be strong enough, they also needed to be lucky enough. Damn it. The man with the aquiline nose was troubled. He was hesitant. If Situjin was among these mechas, it would be best for him to send a battleship in every direction to chase after her. But what if this was just a smokescreen, and Situjin was actually still on the Starhawk? Without 8 battleships and 5 first-level battleships, it would be impossible for them to break through Starhawk's defense. Contact Master for me. The man with the aquiline nose still couldn't make up his mind. If he made the wrong decision in the end, he was afraid that the anger of the higher-ups would fall on him. Although it would make him seem useless if he let Master make the decision, at least he wouldn't have to bear the risk. It had to be said that Gu Xingyin's prediction was right. She was betting on her luck. She bet that the people surrounding her weren't bold enough. She won the bet. By the time the man with the aquiline nose contacted Master and made the decision, they would have enough time to hide themselves. When Gu Xingyin opened her eyes again, she found herself wandering in space. His body was a little sore, and even his bones cracked when he moved. Other than that, there wasn't much of a problem. Gu Xingyin concluded that the others should be able to withstand this level of pressure. As long as they were not discovered by the pursuers or were unlucky enough to encounter a black hole, there should not be much of a problem. She looked around and carefully observed her surroundings before driving in a certain direction. She didn't dare to turn on her communicator, because she was afraid that the other party would activate detection and lock onto her communicator number. If that was the case, opening the communication channel would be no different from exposing himself to them. Fortunately, she could still roughly identify her direction. If she walked in that direction, she wouldn't deviate too much. When the first prince received the news, it was already noon the next day. He put down the teacup in his hand and said sternly, "What did you say? The Starhawk has been besieged by the universe's terrifying forces, and we've lost contact with General Situ?" Chapter 427. The messenger lowered his head and said carefully, "This is the latest news. We've only lost contact with General Situ, but there's no bad news." The first prince said in a low voice, "Search. Mobilize all our forces and find General Situ at all costs." The messenger hurriedly replied, "His Majesty and the Situ family have also received the news. It's said that the second prince is also searching." The first prince's gaze turned cold. Father and the Situ family were fine, but the second prince probably didn't want a living Situ Jean. "We must find her before the second prince does." Yes. The subordinate also knew how important General Situ was to his side, so he immediately accepted the order and left. On the fourth day, when the Star Eagle successfully returned to the Galaxy Empire, the news could no longer be hidden. The news that the general of the Empire had been ambushed and no one knew if she was alive or dead quickly spread throughout the Empire. The entire galaxy was shaken. "Damn it. The news is already out, but we still haven't found Situ Jean." In a luxurious room, a handsome man with a gloomy expression was cursing fiercely. He looked at the people kneeling below and was furious. "A bunch of trash. 13 first-class warships. It's enough to destroy a small planet. You can't even deal with Situ Jean. Get out of here. Continue searching." "Your Highness, please calm down." A gentle voice sounded, and someone handed a cup of hot tea to the man. The second prince was very annoyed, and wasn't in the mood to drink tea. He raised his hand and swept the tea to the ground. Some of it even splashed onto the skirt of the person who came. The person didn't mind and only said gently, "Your Highness, there's no need to be anxious. There's still no news, right? Situ Jean is still drifting in some corner. She might have already died in space. You can't say for sure." The person who spoke had a gentle face and a gentle expression. It was Qi Lin, who had been sent to the military court by Gu Xingyin. The man in front of her was the one who had secretly rescued Qi Lin. He was the second-in-line successor of the Empire, the second prince. She comforted him gently, but the second prince didn't appreciate it, and only glared at her angrily. "It's all your fault, woman. What kind of rotten idea did you come up with? You asked me to mobilize 13 first-level warships to ambush that woman, Situ Jean. You swore that you would succeed, but what happened in the end? Now Father is already suspecting me. There aren't many people who can use the super-strong plasma beam. Even if I don't get implicated this time, I will lose half of my wings." The second prince felt his heart ache when he thought of this. It was not easy to arrange a force in the army. The forces that he could command now were almost all relying on the forces of his mother's family. This time he would definitely suffer heavy losses. "Your Highness, please forgive me. I never thought that Situ Jean would be so cunning." Facing the furious second prince, Qi Lin could only kneel and beg for forgiveness. She lowered her head as she spoke, and her eyes were filled with disdain and mockery. How could such an idiot be the second prince of the Empire? It would be great if he could really become the emperor of the Star River Empire. With such an emperor around, he would be able to destroy the empire on his own. She was wearing a light pink dress today. When she lowered her head, most of the skin on her neck and back was exposed. It was white and flawless. The second prince looked down and didn't know why, but he suddenly felt his mouth go dry. He only felt that the milky white skin was so alluring. The second prince had never restrained himself when he wanted a woman. Chapter 428. He reached out and pulled her up. Qi Lin stumbled and fell into his arms. So fragrant. The second prince took a deep sniff at Qi Lin's neck and praised. Qi Lin did not say anything. She only glanced at the second prince as if she wanted to say something. Her meaning was obvious. The second prince's heart melted at this look. He only felt an impulse spread from his lower abdomen to his entire body. He raised his hand and picked her up by the waist. The two of them walked to the back and instantly rolled together. When the second prince's subordinate came to report the news, he heard some unspeakable sounds inside. He sighed and resigned himself to his fate and left. His master was working. He should not disturb him. Gu Xingyin did not know how long she had been drifting in the galaxy. Fortunately, she had the system so she could find out some things. When she first woke up, the system could not be contacted for some reason. It took a long time before it reappeared. Fortunately, the system told her that she had chosen the right direction. System, can you find out about the other people? Also, how long will it take for me to reach the Empire? Gu Xingyin asked. The system checked for a while. Among the 8 people who came out with the host, 5 of them are still alive. 2 of them are close to the host. Based on the current speed, it will take half a month to reach the Empire. Gu Xingyin's heart sank. There were only 5 people whose vital signs could be detected, which meant that 2 of them had met with mishap. Her heart suddenly tightened. Who are those 2 people? Can you find out? Although she knew that the chances of her lover being among them were very low, she was still panicking. The system checked for a while. According to the strength of their vital signs, the 2 who died should be S-class elites. The host's lover is not among them. Gu Xingyin's heart calmed down a little. As long as nothing happened, with Enoch's strength, reaching the Empire safely was not a big problem. However, if they still needed half a month to reach the Empire, she did not know what those people would do. System, can you avoid the others and send a distress signal to the Situ family? At this time, Gu Xingyin did not dare to trust anyone except for the Situ family that she could control. The system said, let me try. After a while the system spoke. It's very difficult to do. There's a risk of exposure. None of the people looking for the host have revealed their identities. I can notify the Situ clan, but it is beyond the technology of this plane to block all information about the host. It was exposed not because it was discovered by the enemy, but because it was afraid of being discovered by the laws of this world. Gu Xingyin said, forget it, I'll go by myself. Mission number 1, if she was discovered by the world law, there would only be one consequence for her: being forcefully expelled. Then everything she had done before would have been in vain. The system had never mentioned any punishment for failing a mission. However, Gu Xingyin's very existence was to complete missions. Even if the system did not care about success or failure, she could not bear to fail. How's the quest target doing? Gu Xingyin asked. The system told him about Qi Lin's connection with the second prince, and attached another big piece of news. She actually... Gu Xingyin sneered. She even said that she admires the admiral of the Imperium. What does she think of her mother by doing this? Chapter 429. The Empire's General Situ had disappeared for half a month. The military was already in an uproar. The second prince's faction believed that with the current search conditions, there was no news after half a month. Not even a single clue could be found, so it was basically confirmed that she was dead. The first prince and the Situ family were adamant that they could not jump to conclusions before there were results. Actually, they were arguing because of one thing: power. As the commander of the Violent Lion Legion, Situ Jin's position was undoubtedly very important. Once her death was confirmed, the Violent Lion Legion would definitely need a new leader. This was a good thing for the second prince, but it was a terrible nightmare for the first prince and the Situ clan behind him. Now, as long as Situ Jin's death was not confirmed, the first prince would have to delay. As long as Situ Jin was around, no one could replace her position as the commander of the Violent Lion Legion. Another 2 days passed. 3 of the people who had escaped with Gu Xingyin had already returned to the Empire. 2 of them were confirmed dead. Boss. The man standing by the window suddenly turned his head. How is it? The person who came to report the news was silent. Enoch's expression dimmed. There's still no news, right? The person nodded with difficulty. Enoch looked up and said calmly, you can leave. Continue to search. As long as there's no news, continue to search. Yes. After the person left, Enoch raised his right hand to cover his face, as if he was running away from something. You'll definitely be fine. You're Situ Jin. A low sigh sounded in the empty room. After another 3 days, the other 2 people were found, but there was no news of Situ Jin. The second prince's faction used this opportunity to spread rumors that Situ Jin had died in the uninhabited galaxy. At the same time, they contacted the military to pressure them, saying that the 3 trump card legions could not be without a commander. They requested the emperor to remove Situ Jin from her position as the commander of the Violent Lion Legion. The emperor's heart wavered. After all, The empire's trump card legions could not be without a commander. No matter how the first prince's faction argued, the emperor still gave a decree in the end. 3 days later, the Violent Lion Legion's vice commander, Francis, would be awarded the position of commander. The emperor would personally hold an award ceremony. What was Gu Xingyin doing now? System, how much longer do you need? Gu Xingyin asked anxiously. The system replied, about 3 more days. Originally, the two of them had followed the shortest route, which would take them half a month to return to the star field where the Galaxy Empire was located. However, Gu Xingyin's luck was off the charts. She had encountered a once-in-a-thousand-years meteorite flow, and had no choice but to change locations to avoid it. This exchange dragged on for quite some time. When Gu Xingyin heard that it would be 3 days, she finally felt relieved. She took out a bottle of nutrient fluid for herself. Even if an SSS elite could go days without food, she still had to ensure that her body had enough strength to deal with any unexpected situations. However, the system quickly added, "Host, I want to remind you of something. As there has been no news of you for many days, the Emperor of the Galaxy Empire has decided on the successor of the tyrannical Lion Legion. The award ceremony will be held in 3 days. Gu Xingyin, system, find me the fastest and shortest route." Chapter 430. 3 days later. The Empire's Glory Plaza. Lieutenant General Francis was a middle-aged man with sharp eyebrows. His expression was solemn as he stood there in his military uniform. He thought that he would never have the chance to become a Legion commander in this life. Although he worshipped his superior and felt sorry for her, at this moment, it was undeniable that Lieutenant General Francis's joy was greater than the regret of his superior's early death. However, many of the Violent Lion Legion's officers didn't look too good. As a Legion commander, Situ Jean was undoubtedly a success. She had led this trump card legion to countless victories, and was the goddess in the hearts of all the soldiers and officers of the Violent Lion Legion. However, today the position of the goddess would be replaced by another person. Even if that person was the lieutenant general they worshipped, these people still couldn't accept it. The Violent Lion Legion is the glory of the Empire. The Emperor began to stand on the platform and read out a lengthy line. Colonel Shunan raised his head. The sun was a little bright today and the sunlight was very dazzling. Even tears almost came out. He didn't listen to the Emperor's beautiful words that were obviously embellished by countless clerks. He thought in his heart, if only the Admiral could appear here right now, she would always be the commander of the Violent Lion Legion in his heart. There were many people who had the same thoughts as Shunan, and some of them even had red eyes. They didn't believe that the Admiral had died, but today's award ceremony meant that the Empire had indirectly admitted the Admiral's death. Next, I will announce that Lieutenant General Francis will succeed. The Emperor's speech was coming to an end. The main event had arrived. Shunan collected his thoughts and witnessed the arrival of this moment with all the soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion. Wait! A familiar voice rang out. It wasn't loud, but it accurately reached everyone's ears. Violent Lion Legion. The Emperor didn't finish his words when he suddenly stopped. Everyone turned to look behind them. At the entrance of the plaza, a figure stood there quietly. She was wearing the uniform of the Violent Lion Legion. Her knee-length dark green military windbreaker fluttered in the wind, and the epaulets on her shoulders shone brightly. Gu Xingyin walked towards them step by step. The soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion parted to make way for her, and saluted her silently. Gu Xingyin walked all the way to the center, and gave a standard military salute to the Emperor, who seemed to be staring at her in shock. Your Majesty, Violent Lion Legion's Legion Commander, Situ Jean, reporting for duty. The Emperor came back to his senses and smiled. It is a great fortune for our empire that General Situ has returned safely. Gu Xingyin looked around and asked, seemingly puzzled, I wonder what this is. Did I miss something big? The Emperor was speechless. Gu Xingyin had asked that on purpose. She, Situ Jean, had worked so hard for the empire for so many years. She had only disappeared for less than a month, before she was declared dead. If she didn't annoy this emperor, she wouldn't be happy. The Emperor squeezed out a smile and said gently, It's nothing big. The military saw that you, the Legion commander, had disappeared for many days. So they decided to choose an acting Legion commander to temporarily take over your duties. Gu Xingyin had returned, so the emperor naturally couldn't say things like, "We thought you had met with a mishap." Gu Xingyin made an "oh" sound and said calmly, "Since I'm back, there's no need to trouble Lieutenant General Francis." After she finished speaking, she turned around and saluted the countless soldiers of the Violent Lion Legion behind her. "Thank you for your hard work during this period of time." Chapter 431. When Gu Xingyin woke up the next morning, the first thing she thought of was, "What a pity about the red wine last night. I specially prepared it for you." The man behind her exposed his bare arm and wrapped it around her waist. Enoch enjoyed the feeling of skin contact with his lover very much. He half closed his eyes and kissed Gu Xingyin's face. "It seems that I was too soft-hearted to let you go last night. You actually still have the mind to think about this." Gu Xingyin snorted in her heart. "Soft-hearted? You said it as if the man who had sex for most of the night was not you." She pushed away the man on her body and got up to go into the bathroom. When she came out of the shower, a certain man was half leaning on the bed and looking at her. He was not wearing clothes, and the quilt was hanging loosely on his waist. From Gu Xingyin's angle, she could see the smooth and beautiful lines of his muscles. Gu Xingyin praised, "Your abs are very good." Enoch showed a bitter expression. "You threw me away after using me. You didn't even have time to be intimate in the morning." Gu Xingyin rolled her eyes in her heart. She did not want to pay attention to this man who was too immersed in his role. She neatly changed her clothes, leaned over the man's face and kissed him heavily. "Little beauty, wait for me to come back. I will pamper you." After saying this, she pushed the door open and walked out in the man's eyes. She still had a lot of business to do today. The general, who had survived the disaster, went straight into the palace to see the emperor. She did not say a word of nonsense. When she saw the emperor, she directly took out several documents from her space button. "Your Majesty, these are some of the things I found. You may be in the mood to take a look." Gu Xingyin pointed out. It was about the attack this time, about the things that the second prince did in private, about the malignant tumors in the military department, and about the second prince's new favorite, Qi Lin, who was said to be very favored. Most of them were found out by Gu Xingyin under the system's instructions. A small number of things were done in secret, and the system directly gave the results to her. After Gu Xingyin handed the evidence to the emperor, she walked out. The emperor was not an incompetent person. When he saw these things, he naturally knew what to do. As expected, the emperor acted quickly. The next day, many people from the 3 legions were summoned by the emperor. At night, among the officers who were dismissed, there was 1 lieutenant general, 2 major generals, 10 lieutenant colonels, and several other soldiers. On the 3rd day, the royal guards arrived at the second prince's palace and forcefully took away his most favored lover. The entire palace was placed under house arrest. On the 4th day, the second prince was stripped of his qualification as the second successor. Before these things were done, there was not the slightest bit of news in the palace. Therefore, when His Majesty's swift and decisive actions were announced, the entire upper class of the empire was shaken, and the people were even more confused. What exactly happened? After this incident, the entire empire was jittery for a few months. Everyone was in danger. Everyone wanted to be as low-key as possible. They were afraid that if His Majesty was unhappy one day, he would take his anger out on them. Your emperor's methods are quite impressive. The Federation will have to avoid the empire's sharp edge for the next 1,000 years. Enoch held a wine glass and commented lightly. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Of course. Those old fellows in the Federation, in the name of democracy and freedom, are busy fighting for power every day. They are not even unified internally. How can they be a match for our empire? Chapter 432. Gu Xingyin went to the prison to see Qi Lin. This time, she was not in the military's prison, but the royal family's special prison for important prisoners. Those who entered this place would never be able to leave. Generally, those who entered this place had no future to speak of. It was conceivable that the guards would not spend too much effort on them. At least, when Gu Xingyin came in, Qilin's appearance was quite miserable. Her light purple dress was covered in dark stains. There was her own blood here, as well as the dust on the ground. Hearing the voice, Qilin only came back to her senses after a long while. She stared at Gu Xingyin for a long time before realizing who she was. After realizing who it was, Qilin's eyes finally regained some color. She used all the remaining strength in her body, and threw herself in front of Gu Xingyin through the transparent metal door, made of special material. General. Gu Xingyin signaled the person behind her to open the door. The person hesitated for a moment. Gu Xingyin said calmly, "Don't worry. If I let a woman like this escape, I, Situjin, would have lived for nothing." The system had already checked that Qilin did not have anything on her that could pose a threat. The royal prison was also heavily guarded. Even if Qilin had wings, she would not be able to escape. The guard smiled. "I'm not afraid that this woman will escape. I'm just afraid that this person is cunning and will accidentally hurt the general." As he spoke, he opened the door and steeled his heart to leave. He stood guard at the only exit not far away. Qilin had been staring here. When she saw the door open, she threw herself at Gu Xingyin. How could Gu Xingyin let her touch her? With a slight movement of her feet, Qilin missed and fell to the ground. Qilin smiled bitterly and didn't say much. She didn't even have the strength to get up. She just crawled on the ground and begged Gu Xingyin, General, please save me. Gu Xingyin looked at her and said slowly, "You know best what you have done. Qilin, even if you die 10,000 times, it won't be enough." Qilin cried bitterly, "I'm really wrong. Please save me. Otherwise, you can tell them to let me die. Let me die quickly too." Gu Xingyin was a little surprised. She had only heard that there were all kinds of cruel punishments in the royal prison of darkness. It was said that it would make people wish they were dead. Originally, she thought it was an exaggeration. Seeing Qilin like this, she didn't expect it to be true. Qilin had been with Situjin for many years, so Gu Xingyin knew what kind of person he was. If she hadn't been tortured to a certain extent, she definitely wouldn't have become like this. The most tragic thing was that, just as she said, she couldn't even die. Even if she bit her tongue immediately, the device monitoring her vital signs 24 hours a day would immediately alert the police. With the current medical technology, a spray tube could solve the problem, not to mention other methods. Gu Xingyin came here to solve a question. "Qilin, there are some things I don't understand," she said directly. Qilin didn't even raise her head. "If you can solve my questions, I can suggest to His Majesty to let you die quickly," Gu Xingyin said. Qilin responded this time. "Ask me. I'll answer as long as I can. After you were saved by the second prince, you betrayed the Star Hawk and caused us to be ambushed. I can understand that. Maybe you have a grudge. But I don't understand. Your father passed away long ago, and your mother raised you. You also grew up in the Empire. What made you willing to become a pawn of the Federation in the Empire?" Chapter 433. Hearing that, Qilin fell silent. Gu Xingyin did not rush her. She just stood there quietly and waited. After a while, Qilin sneered. "Mother." Her voice was filled with endless hatred. "If it weren't for my mother, I might not hate your Star River Empire so much. When my father was still alive, they often quarreled. My mother was very strong. She did not allow my father to say anything good about the Federation. She even hated me, a daughter born in the Federation. I still don't understand. Since the two of them have such different thoughts, why did they get together in the first place? Why did she give birth to me? After my father died, she became even more abnormal. She was not sad about my father's death at all. She especially hated me, a Federation citizen. On the surface, I grew up normally. However, who knows what kind of life I led? During the day, I would wear bright clothes to school. When I returned home, what awaited me was endless curses and corporal punishment. She was a person of status, so she could not have any stains on her. In front of outsiders, we were very close. But in private, we could not wait for each other to die. Qilin's eyes were cold. Every time she hit me, I hated the Empire more. Later, when I found out the truth about my father's death, I hated that I could not let all the people of the empire die. For me, the invitation from the Federation's intelligence agency was like a lamp. It let me know what to do in the future. Gu Xingyin stood there quietly and listened to her. She knew that everything that happened here had been monitored for 2 years. Where is the organization you are in? What other people are there? Qi Lin smiled bitterly. How could someone like me know about this kind of thing? Every time I was asked to go to a different place to accept the mission left behind by the higher-ups. After she finished, Qi Lin looked at Gu Xingyin expectantly. General, I have told you everything I know. You. Gu Xingyin nodded. I will bring it up with His Majesty. Qi Lin glanced at her gratefully. Gu Xingyin looked at Qi Lin with pity. Qi Lin was a woman tortured by hatred. She could have chosen to stay away from that sick family after she grew up, do whatever she wanted to do, and live a peaceful life. Unfortunately, she had chosen a path of no return. The next day, Gu Xingyin received the news that Qi Lin had been secretly executed. At this point, this world's mission regarding the supporting female lead Qi Lin was completed. Qi Lin's last words were also taken seriously by the emperor. As a ruler, he couldn't tolerate the existence of such an underground organization in his empire. After a thorough investigation, the results were shocking. Even the military and the upper echelons of the political world had spies from other forces. The entire empire had gone through a bloodbath this year. In the history of the empire, this year's turmoil was called the Great Purge. However, none of this had much to do with Gu Xingyin. As a staunch member of the royal family, she would never be implicated. She brought Enoch back to the Situ family. There was no doubt that it was a huge shock to the entire family. Situ Jin, the most promising member of the younger generation of the Situ family, was in love, and the other party was a nameless man. Although he was very handsome, no matter how handsome a man was, if he didn't have the ability to hug a goddess like Situ Jin, he would probably be taught a lesson by the men of the empire. Chapter 434. In the guest courtyard of the Situ family, Enoch looked at the unfriendly Situ family members in front of him, and smiled innocently. Of course, he knew what they were here for. Gu Xingyin was not here. This kind of thing was not suitable for her to appear. If Enoch could not deal with these people himself, he would never be able to get the Situ family's approval. 2 hours later, the Situ clansmen who were full of energy and confidence and wanted to teach a certain arrogant brat a lesson, were all bruised and swollen. They limped out of Enoch's courtyard while supporting each other. You really didn't hold back, Gu Xingyin said. Enoch snorted coldly. These guys want to separate me and my wife. How can I not give them a good beating? Plus, I guess this is the only time I have a chance to give them a good beating. When the two of them officially established their relationship in the future, these people would be his brothers-in-law, and there would be no reason for him to beat them up. Gu Xingyin glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. This stingy man. In a situation where everyone in the empire was not optimistic, Enoch relied on his own ability to make the Situ family relent. The Situ family leader personally announced the good news of the two of them getting engaged. Less than an hour after the Situ family leader announced the engagement, Enoch's name was at the top of the Star Web's Most Wanted to Kill list. Many of the empire's citizens even expressed that they could not accept their goddess marrying a nameless man. Look, everyone thinks you're not good enough for me. Gu Xingyin sat on the chair in front of the window with a book open on her lap. She had taken off her handsome military uniform and was wearing loose and casual home clothes, which was rare. The sun shone on her body, making her look casual and lazy. Enoch saw the teasing look in his eyes and snorted. He bent down and picked her up easily. Whether I'm good enough for you or not isn't decided by others. His low breathing brushed against her ear. Feeling the change in the man's body, Gu Xingyin glanced at him coldly. Enough is enough. Enoch chuckled. Don't you like it? He showed a resentful and sad expression at the right time. Or, do you only like me in bed and don't recognize me when we get off the bed? Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was too immersed in the role and raised his eyebrows. Well said. She stretched out her right hand and gently lifted the man's chin. I think you are handsome and extraordinary. You are most suitable to be a little brother to warm the bed. Enoch cooperated and carried her to the bed. Today's weather is good. I'll let you see how suitable I am to warm the bed. Soon some indescribable sounds came from the bedroom. No matter how unhappy Situ Jin's admirers in the empire were, the engagement banquet was still held as usual. However, Gu Xingyin realized that she had underestimated a certain man's self-esteem. She looked at the Windstorm Merchant Guild's fleet that suddenly descended in unison, as well as the orderly voices that shouted, "Madam!" After a moment of surprise, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When did you become so serious? Enoch rarely wore formal clothes and was holding her hand. He replied, How can I really let people think that I'm a man who lives off a woman? Even if I don't care, you are the empire's #1 goddess. If you really marry a useless man, won't people gossip? He couldn't bear to let his woman suffer because of him. Chapter 435. Gu Xingyin's heart was filled with warmth and sweetness when she heard that. Among all the worlds, Enoch was the best at pleasing a girl. At this moment, Enoch complained again. The emperor of your empire is too greedy. In order to let my fleet in successfully, I spent a lot of money. Gu Xingyin smiled and did not say anything. Based on her past experience dealing with the Storm Chamber of Commerce, this man was obviously not someone who would suffer losses. Sure enough, the next second Enoch spoke again. The red crystal production this year is not good. I have to tell them to sell it sparingly. Gu Xingyin secretly lit a candle for a certain emperor. After this wedding banquet that was broadcasted live across the entire empire, all the mocking and disdainful comments disappeared in an instant. Gu Xingyin applied for a month's leave from the emperor, and the two began their honeymoon journey. On the starship that was in autopilot mode, Enoch hugged Gu Xingyin as they stood in front of the transparent window and looked at the starry sky outside. The first time I saw you, I felt that you were very special, Enoch said slowly. Gu Xingyin did not comment. Which history book did you read about this ancient way of chatting up girls? Enoch laughed when he heard that. Gu Xingyin leaned into his arms and could clearly feel the man's entire chest vibrating. He said, You're really not romantic at all. He gently kissed the ear of the person in his arms. This is not sweet talk. I was really mesmerized by you the first time I saw you. He could not describe that feeling. When he saw her figure walking down from the Star Hawk on the storm planet, he felt that he could not take his eyes off her. It was like a signal from the depths of his soul. The voice in his heart told him that it was her, and he wanted her. He had seen this face in the information before, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. He was deeply shocked. He originally thought that the path he was pursuing would be very difficult, but he did not expect the indifferent person to nod without hesitation after hearing his words. Okay. He thought that this was probably the luckiest day of his life. Enoch hugged the person in his arms with a satisfied expression. Suddenly, a memory flashed through his mind. His expression froze, and all of a sudden, many unfamiliar fragments poured into his mind. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt that her body was a little heavy. The inexplicable pressure made it hard for her to breathe even though she had an SSS physique. What's wrong? She sensed that something was wrong. She resisted the discomfort and turned around in the man's arms. Enoch looked like he was in pain. When Gu Xingyin reached out to touch his face, he suddenly opened his eyes. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. The person in front of him was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. There were too many things contained in his eyes. Xingyin. There was a smile on his face as he called her name softly. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Who are you? She asked warily. No one knew the name Gu Xingyin except for the system. She did not know why, although she was vigilant. She subconsciously felt that this man would not hurt her. System. She called the system in her mind, but the system did not respond. Ajahn Sisi Nika. He said the familiar names one by one. Gu Xingyin covered her mouth in disbelief. Chapter 436. You. For the first time, tears came out of her eyes, but Gu Xingyin did not have the time to wipe them away. She looked at the man in front of her without blinking. Enoch reached out his hand, and gently wiped away the tears on her face. He sighed and hugged her in his arms. Don't cry, I'll always be by your side. Gu Xingyin really could not stop her tears. She had been through so many worlds, and every time she went to find him alone, she always remembered the memories between them, but he did not remember her. Sometimes she would feel wronged. You. Who are you? Gu Xingyin finally asked this question. The man hugging her paused for a moment, then said, This question, now is not the time to tell you. She lifted her head from his arms. Then can you remember me in the future? The man gently kissed the corner of her eyes. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. Gu Xingyin only felt her vision go black, and then she lost consciousness. When she opened her eyes again, Gu Xingyin found that she had returned to the space where she was born. The system appeared by her side this time. What's going on? She asked. The system replied. In the previous world, the host's identity was discovered by the laws of the world, and you were forcefully expelled. Why is it like this? Nothing like this has ever happened before? The system replied. The host should know the reason. In the previous world, another powerful soul awakened its memories. The host has been through many mission worlds, and the strength of the soul has been raised to an extremely powerful level. A world can only contain one soul. It's fine if your lover's memories are sealed, but once he recovers his memories, he will be immediately discovered by the laws of the world. Gu Xingyin was silent. So, the cause of all this was her lover? Is he okay? She was worried. The host can rest assured. System, you've always known his identity, right? Can you tell me? The system said. This question, when he is willing to tell you, you will naturally know. Then what about Situjin? If she was sent back to the space, then what about Situjin in the mission world? During Situjin and her husband's honeymoon, they unfortunately encountered an interstellar storm and died. Gu Xingyin was silent. Fortunately, the mission had been completed. System. Gu Xingyin struggled to ask her last question. According to what you said, does that mean that he and I will never have the chance to have complete memories of each other? She was a little afraid of the answer the system would give her. The system replied, yes. Gu Xingyin was shocked. The system continued. The host's soul needs to be strong enough, so strong that even if the world's laws discover you, they can't do anything to you. Gu Xingyin grasped the crux of the matter. You're talking about me. Do you mean that he's already strong enough? The system used silence to express its agreement. How can I make my soul stronger? The system replied quickly. Every time the host enters a world and completes a mission, the host's soul will be upgraded. This is the fastest way. Gu Xingyin received the answer, and instantly became energetic. System, let's enter the next mission world. Yes, host. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and allowed the system to bring her to another world. Chapter 437. Gu Xingyin found herself waking up on a huge pink princess bed. In the previous two worlds, one was a general who was forced to dress up as a man, and the other was a cold-blooded general. Gu Xingyin found herself not used to the sudden change in style of a young girl. She sorted out the plot in her mind. The original name was Su Keqing. Before she was 10 years old, she was a pampered young lady. When she was 10 years old, her father passed away due to illness and her mother committed suicide after writing her will. She became the sole heir of the Su family's wealth. However, she was still young. Su Keqing's mother went to beg her father's best friend to be her guardian before her daughter became an adult. He Junyan was 23 years old at that time, and was a well-known business powerhouse in Jinhua City. When Su Keqing was 10 years old, she had lost two of her closest relatives in succession. One could imagine how big of a blow it was. However, her guardian was busy with business matters, and could not spare much time to accompany her. Unexpectedly, she developed a rebellious temperament. He Junyan was usually busy with business and only paid attention to her eating, drinking, and playing. He did not pay much attention to her. Su Keqing's character was spoiled, but she was not a bad person. Apart from her bad reputation in school, she did not cause much trouble. However, later on, she met a girl whose name was very similar to hers. Su Qing. At first, Su Keqing did not like her. She did not like this girl whose name was very similar to hers. When her parents were still alive, they called her Qingqing. Su Qing was also called Qingqing. However, Su Qing was really a very warm person, just like her name. She did not mind Su Keqing's hostility towards her. On the first day, she smiled brightly and told her that their names were very similar. It was really fate. Later on, when she found out that Su Keqing's parents were no longer around, she treated her even better. During festivals, she would give her handmade gifts. At noon, she would share lunch with her and often tell her little jokes. No one had ever put in so much effort for her. Su Keqing was just a 10-year-old girl. How could she resist such kindness? She quickly treated Su Qing as her best friend. She would confide in her, share all kinds of little secrets, and even bring her home. Su Qing even told her that she was born to be a rich young lady and should live with pride. Those who did not like her were just jealous of her. Su Keqing naively believed him. She continued to do things her own way. When she encountered some criticism, she did not bother to explain. She firmly believed that the innocent would be innocent. Su Keqing was silly. She didn't know how bad her reputation had become. She also didn't know how good Su Qing's reputation was compared to hers. Everyone knew that there was a gentle and kind Su Qing by the side of the bad-tempered and vicious Miss Su Keqing. The two of them went to junior high school and high school together. Su Keqing even used her connections to go to the same university as Su Qing. Until her graduation, until her guardian returned all her assets to her. She even personally invited Su Qing to join her company. This was the beginning of all the nightmares. Su Qing was promoted step by step under her green light, and quickly received unanimous praise from the company. Su Keqing had never felt any sense of crisis. She was happy for her friend, until Su Qing threw a signed share transfer agreement in front of her. Su Keqing, do you know that I've tolerated you for a long time? Chapter 438. Su Qing had told her that she had always hated Su Keqing, and that she had only been pretending to care for her all these years. She was jealous of Su Keqing. She could not accept that she was better than Su Keqing in every aspect. Yet she could only be Su Keqing's backdrop. Su Keqing did not even know when she had signed the share transfer agreement. She had been kicked out of her company. In a daze, Su Keqing had driven her car into a guardrail and ended her life. Gu Xingyin finished reading the entire plot and felt that Su Keqing was really stupid. She was so stupid that she was pitiful. However, she also understood her. She had never enjoyed warmth, and no one had treated her so well. When she suddenly met someone like Su Qing, it was like a person who had fallen into the abyss and finally saw a ray of sunshine. She just couldn't let go of it once she grabbed it. As for Su Qing, Gu Xingyin's eyes turned cold. People who played with other people's true feelings were always so disgusting. At this time, Su Keqing had just turned 10 years old, and had just experienced the biggest blow in her life. After her mother's funeral, He Junyan had brought her back to the He family. She slowly got up from the girlish bed and looked around the room. The entire room was pink in princess style. From Gu Xingyin's eyes, she could tell that He Junyan, her guardian, was really generous to Su Keqing in terms of material things. She did not wear shoes and walked barefoot to the full-length mirror. In the mirror, the girl's eyebrows were not fully developed, and she looked a little haggard. It was obvious that the successive events during this period of time had hit her hard. Her big eyes were round and bright, her small and delicate nose, her pink and slightly pouty lips, and her soft hair were slightly curled. She was a little beauty that no one could harden their heart when they saw her. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in, Gu Xingyin answered instinctively. Someone opened the door. It was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. Her eyes were very gentle. Miss Sir is calling for you for lunch. Before she could finish her sentence, she noticed Gu Xingyin's bare feet on the floor and hurried over. As she walked, she nagged. Miss, you can't not wear shoes. Although it's not cold now, it's almost autumn. If you don't pay attention when you're young, in the future. She nagged, not like a woman in her 20s, but more like an auntie. As she spoke, she bent down to get a pair of slippers for Gu Xingyin to put on. Got it, Sister May. I'll be careful. Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. He Junyan was afraid that she wouldn't like older women, so he had spent a lot of effort to find Sister May. It was said that her hometown was in the countryside, and her husband had died in an accident after half a year of marriage. She was unwilling to remarry, but the He family was hiring. Seeing that she was efficient and kind, they hired her to take care of Su Keqing. When Sister May found out about Su Keqing, she had always felt sorry for her. Unfortunately, the original Su Keqing had always despised her for being too long-winded, and had always been annoyed by her. Sister May was clearly surprised to hear Gu Xingyin's words. Miss Su had been in the He family for a few days, and had always been indifferent to everyone. Everyone pitied her for having just lost her parents, so they understood. What was wrong with her today? Gu Xingyin saw her expression and blinked her big eyes. She said softly, Sister May, I dreamed of my mother last night. She said that she wants me to listen to Uncle He and be an obedient child. Otherwise she'll be worried. Sister May's eyes moistened when she heard this. She looked at the little girl who seemed to have grown up in an instant and nodded. Yes, yes. Miss, if you listen to Sir and live happily, your mother will be at ease. Chapter 439. Gu Xingyin tidied up and went downstairs. There was already someone sitting at the dining table. The dishes were laid out on the table, but no one was eating. The man was obviously waiting for her. Gu Xingyin looked at the man from head to toe. Since they were at home, he wasn't dressed very formally. He didn't wear a tie on his shirt, and his sleeves were rolled up slightly, revealing half of his forearm. Looking up, his silhouette was slightly deeper than normal. His eyes were deep and spirited, his nose was straight, and his sexy thin lips were slightly pursed. This was a handsome man. Gu Xingyin suddenly remembered a saying, people with thin lips were often heartless. Thinking about He Junyan in the original plot, he was indeed heartless. He Junyan didn't move, and allowed her to look at him. At the same time, he was also looking at Gu Xingyin. She still looked the same, but he felt that something had changed. Hello, Uncle He. Gu Xingyin greeted him obediently. He Junyan was a little surprised. This was the first time Su Keqing had taken the initiative to greet him in the week she had lived here. He looked at Gu Xingyin carefully. The arrogant little girl seemed to be looking at him nervously. Although her expression seemed calm, he could see the hidden nervousness in her eyes and the trace of dependence in her big cat eyes. He suddenly remembered the time when he went to the Su family before the new year. The little Su Keqing had acted like a little adult, and questioned him about who he was. His heart softened instantly. He softened his expression and smiled. Qing, come and eat. He saw that after he spoke, the little girl's expression immediately relaxed and she revealed a big smile. Then she sat down on her seat and ate obediently. He Junyan didn't live with the rest of the family, so there were only 2 masters in this huge villa. After the meal, the servants in the house finished packing up. He Junyan sat there and looked at Gu Xingyin, who was standing there hesitantly. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, What's the matter, Qing? This silly child. She had been standing here for so long. He suspected that if he did not speak, she would stand here for the entire afternoon. Hearing his words, the little girl in front of him seemed to have gained her courage. She walked up to him, opened her arms, and hugged his waist. He Junyan felt awkward for a moment. He didn't like to interact with people. Even his own parents rarely had physical contact with him. He was about to push away the little girl in his arms when Gu Xingyin suddenly raised her head and looked at him with her big unblinking eyes. Uncle He, everyone says that since my parents are no longer around, Qing will only have Uncle He. Is that true? When the little girl said this, the sadness in her eyes made people want to erase all the things that made her unhappy. He Junyan couldn't bring his hand down no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he sighed and changed the direction of his outstretched hand to pull Gu Xingyin into his arms. You still have Uncle He. Uncle He will make sure Qing grows up happily and be the happiest little princess. But everyone says that Uncle He will get married in the future and have children. When that time comes, no one will want Qing anymore. Gu Xingyin despised herself for acting cute at her age. But after thinking about it, she felt that it was okay to act coquettishly in front of her lover, so she went all out. Chapter 440. Hee Junyan hugged her gently. That won't happen. Uncle He promises that no matter what happens, I'll love Qingqing the most. Really? The young lady's large eyes sparkled as she stared unblinkingly at Hee Junyan. Hee Junyan couldn't help but nod. Really? Gu Xingyin happily buried her head in his chest and hugged him even tighter. Uncle He is the best. Hee Junyan broke into a smile at her childish words. Then, he realized what was going on and couldn't help but laugh. Since when did he become so easily affected by others? But looking at the young lady in his arms, his heart softened. What did it matter if he doted on such a pitiful and adorable young lady? Gu Xingyin leaned her entire body into her lover's arms, her heart peaceful. The system said that as long as she experienced more worlds and completed various tasks, one day her soul would be strong enough. One day, she would be able to stay in the same place as her lover, who had complete memories. Unknowingly, 2 years passed. In these 2 years, Su Keqing and Hee Junyan's relationship grew better and better. Hee Junyan had pitied her in the beginning, but now, he had truly placed this young lady in his heart. He looked at the young lady's increasingly dependent gaze, and felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. The melancholy and uneasiness in the young lady's eyes faded, replaced by pride, willfulness, and high spirits. These were all things that he had brought to her. Uncle He. As soon as he stepped through the door, Gu Xingyin dashed over and threw herself into his arms. Hee Junyan lifted her up with practiced ease. You've gained weight again, he teased. Gu Xingyin pouted and said unhappily, No, Uncle He, you're lying. Ha 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 ha. Qingqing has to report to the new school tomorrow, but Uncle He is very busy tomorrow. What if I don't have time to accompany you? Hee Junyan teased her on purpose. Sure enough, the young lady, who had been in high spirits just a moment ago, was stunned when she heard this. Even her large eyes lost their light as she sat there with her head drooping. It doesn't matter. Uncle He, your company matters are more important. I'll let Sister May accompany me. The little girl clearly looked like she was about to cry, but she still tried to comfort him. Hee Junyan's heart softened at once. He quickly pulled her into his arms and coaxed. Uncle He is here to tease you. How can Uncle He not attend such an important day? As soon as he finished speaking, the little girl in his arms revealed a sly smile. Hee, I lied to you. I knew it was impossible for Uncle He not to accompany me. You were deceived by me. When Gu Xingyin said this, her eyes were full of smiles. Looking at her arrogant little face, Hee Junyan realized that he wasn't angry at being lied to at all. He sighed helplessly. This little devil was really sent by the heavens to jinx him. He reached out and pinched Gu Xingyin's face. Qingqing, you've learned bad things. Gu Xingyin said with a serious face. Even if Qingqing has gone astray, it's still Uncle He's favorite Qingqing. Hee Junyan's face was full of indulgence. Although he looked helpless on the surface, he was happy on the inside. Only a little girl who had been pampered, and never had any worries or troubles would have the guts to say such proud and self-righteous words. For 2 whole years, he had used his heart full of tenderness in exchange for such a precious gift from the heavens. Chapter 441. Hee Junyan personally held Su Keqing's hand as they walked into the school. This school was an elite private high school, and had a good reputation outside. There were almost no negative reports about it. This was also the reason why Hee Junyan had sent Su Keqing here. Today was the first day of school. It was rare for the school to be so lively. There were parents walking their children everywhere. But even among so many people, Hee Junyan and Su Keqing were the most eye-catching couple. Mommy, she's so pretty. I want to take her as my bride. A little fatty couldn't take his eyes off Gu Xingyin, and exclaimed loudly. Hee Junyan's face darkened immediately. He couldn't explain how he felt when he heard those words. It was probably because the treasure he had guarded for so long was being coveted by someone else. Even if the other party was a little kid who didn't know anything, he was still very unhappy. The little fatty's mother could probably tell that Hee Junyan was unhappy. She hurriedly apologized to the two of them, and pulled her son away. Uncle Hee Junyan felt his hand being shaken. He came back to his senses and lowered his head to see the little girl looking at him blankly. Her big eyes were filled with confusion. Uncle Hee, you're unhappy. Gu Xingyin said firmly. He Junyan smiled. No, uncle, he isn't unhappy. Let's go. I'll take you to see your teacher. Then teacher, please take care of our Qingqing. He Junyan's attitude was very sincere. Gu Xingyin's homeroom teacher was a young female teacher who wasn't married yet. When she saw such a handsome man like He Junyan, she couldn't help but blush even though she didn't have any other thoughts. Don't worry, Mr. He. Then Qingqing, uncle will leave first. I'll pick you up after school. He Junyan patiently squatted down and said goodbye to Gu Xingyin patiently. Gu Xingyin nodded obediently. Okay. Goodbye, Uncle He. Qingqing will definitely be obedient. Seeing He Junyan's figure disappear, the little girl's expression finally collapsed. She looked like she was about to cry. The homeroom teacher watched the whole thing from the side. Her heart ached for the little girl's sensibility. She obviously couldn't bear to part with him, but she pretended to be happy so that her parents wouldn't worry. She couldn't help but think of her own little nephew who was the same age as her. He was simply a little devil. How could he be as sensible as this little girl? She personally walked over and held Gu Xingyin's hand as they walked into the classroom. Let's go, Qingqing. I'll introduce you to your new classmates. As soon as Gu Xingyin entered the class, she received countless gazes. She had specially dressed up today. She wore a light pink princess dress, a pair of matching pink boots, and a pink wide-brimmed hat on her head. She looked just like a real little princess. Needless to say, Su Keqing's appearance was very delicate. She blinked her big eyes and stood on the podium with a sweet smile as she introduced herself. Hello everyone, my name is Su Keqing. You can call me Qingqing. Papa. There was a loud round of applause from below. Gu Xingyin took a closer look and saw that it was the little fatty who said that he wanted to marry her. Qingqing, sit with me. The little fatty shouted as if they were close friends. Gu Xingyin smiled at him. Then she tilted her head and looked at the homeroom teacher to ask for her opinion. The homeroom teacher was charmed by her actions and nodded repeatedly. Qingqing, where do you want to sit? You can choose a seat. Chapter 442. Gu Xingyin and the little fatty became deskmates. Hello, Qingqing. My name is Zhang Susu. When the little fatty saw that the most beautiful girl in the class had become his deskmate, he smiled so widely that his eyes narrowed, revealing his big white teeth. Hello. Gu Xingyin greeted him. The little fatty took out a lot of snacks from his bag and placed them on the big table. Come, Qingqing. I'll treat you to something. This was his favorite thing. Qingqing was really too cute. Otherwise, he wouldn't bear to share it with her. Gu Xingyin looked at the pile of snacks and then glanced at the little fatty. She knew in her heart how he got his body shape. She chose the smallest one and held it in her hand. Thank you. The little fatty frowned and grabbed 2 handfuls of chocolate and put it in her hand. Eat more. The one you took is not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Gu Xingyin. This deskmate was too enthusiastic. She didn't know that the little fatty's mind was full of what his hooligan father had said to him. Son, Dad told you, this relationship has to start from a young age. Dad told you, when you enter the school and see the most beautiful girl, you must not be stingy. You must be serious about your relationship. Now you have to prepare early, don't you? Although his father was picked up by his mother and swept aside before he could finish his words, the little fatty remembered these words in his heart. Qingqing was the most beautiful girl in the class. No, Qingqing was the most beautiful girl among all the girls he had ever seen. Listen to Dad and treat her well. When you grow up, marry her and make her your wife. Gu Xingyin didn't know what the little fatty beside her was thinking. She was waiting for Su Qing's arrival. That's right, Su Qing would also be attending this school and this class. Soon, the person she was waiting for arrived. Compared to Su Keqing, Su Qing's dressing was much more proper. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. She wore a sky blue overalls and carried a denim bag. She was also a pink and cute little girl. Gu Xingyin waited for her to introduce herself. Hello everyone, I'm Su Qing. Please call me Qingqing. As Gu Xingyin had expected, Su Qing also asked people to call her Qingqing. In the original plot, Su Keqing had a very bad temper at that time. When she introduced herself to the class, she gave a random name. Later, When Su Qing entered the class, she asked others to call her Qing Qing. Everyone tacitly acknowledged Su Qing as Qing Qing. Su Keqing was just the cold Su Keqing. After Su Qing introduced herself, the expected welcoming scene did not appear. At the end of the day, she was still a 13-year-old girl. Encountering such a situation, she was completely dumbfounded. She looked blankly at her homeroom teacher who was standing at the side. Only then did the form teacher remember that there was still Qing Qing in the class. Before she could say anything, Zhang Susu, who was sitting beside Gu Xingyin, pointed at Gu Xingyin and shouted, "There's already a Qing Qing in our class." Gu Xingyin. Well done. Su Qing's gaze followed and landed on Gu Xingyin. At first glance, she was stunned by the doll's exquisite appearance, which was like that of a TV drama. The little girl's innate competitive mentality made her very unhappy. Under everyone's gaze, Su Qing's eyes suddenly turned red. "But my family calls me Qing Qing." She looked at Su Keqing eagerly, as if hoping that she would say something. Chapter 443. Gu Xingyin saw the look in Su Qing's eyes. She knew what Su Qing wanted. Su Qing looked gentle on the surface, but deep down, she was more selfish and domineering than anyone else. She would never allow anyone else to have what belonged to her. She wanted Gu Xingyin to relent. Gu Xingyin had specially come early today. How could she let Su Qing have her way? Coincidentally, Su Keqing was better at acting coquettishly and crying than anyone else in this lifetime. Gu Xingyin saw that everyone was looking at her because of Su Qing's words, and she seemed to be at a loss. Everyone saw that the delicate little girl's delicate little nose twitched, and tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. Gu Xingyin, who would cry at the slightest disagreement, said while sniffling, "I am Qing Qing. If others are called Qing Qing, then who am I?" Her long eyelashes were stained with tears. She did not look at anyone else, but lowered her eyes and sniffled. The little fatty Zhang Susu seemed to be frightened. He did not even care about the snacks he was eating, and sat at the side anxiously. People's minds were biased. The first person he met was Su Keqing. Su Keqing's appearance was more exquisite and cute than Su Qing's. Now that Su Qing was crying because of Su Qing, he had a deep dislike for this new classmate of Su Qing's. Su Qing seemed to be a little confused. She even held back the tears that were about to fall. She had probably never seen such a delicate little girl. Tears came at the drop of a hat. The homeroom teacher was having a headache. Su Keqing's background was said to be very powerful. When her parents brought her to the school, it was the principal who personally brought her to the class. Although the principal did not say it explicitly, he had said a few words about it. What he meant was that Su Keqing's background was very powerful, and if she was in the class, she should take good care of her and so on. It was only the first day, and she had already made someone cry. This was really, "The child who cries gets candy." This was indeed a famous saying. In the end, Su Keqing became Qing Qing, and Su Qing became Haruko. Gu Xingyin was quite satisfied with the final outcome. When He Junyan came to pick her up in the afternoon, she didn't say much. But at night, he still found out about what had happened in class during the day. He came to the little girl's room, pinched her little nose and sighed. "So delicate, you can't bear the slightest grievance. Have I spoiled you?" Gu Xingyin slapped his big hand away unhappily and pouted. "Love is Uncle He's love. Don't give it to others." He Junyan's heart melted at her words. Sensing the change in his mentality, he finally knew where the little girl's squeamishness came from. It was clearly because he spoiled her. Fine. He Junyan seemed to have accepted his fate. After all, Uncle He will always be there to protect you. So what if my Qing Qing is a little spoiled? My little princess Qing Qing, no matter how spoiled and domineering she is, it doesn't matter. Moreover, her Qing Qing had always been so obedient. CEO He, where are your principles? Where's your bottom line? Oh right, Uncle He, I made a good friend in school today. Gu Xingyin tried her best to act as a little girl who was presenting a treasure to an adult. She excitedly introduced her new friend, Zhang Susu, to He Junyan. At this moment, He Junyan's mood was not so good. That little fatty must be up to no good. He learned how to seduce girls at such a young age. He didn't learn well at all. Ching Ching, listen to uncle. In school, you have to keep a distance from the boys. Good girls will not play close to boys. He Junyan spouted nonsense with a straight face. Chapter 444. Gu Xingyin was laughing in her heart, but on the surface, she looked puzzled. Why, uncle Teacher Xiao Xiao said that we should love each other. He Junyan smiled gently. Good girl Ching Ching. Your teacher means not to throw a tantrum in school, and to be generous and sincere to others. You still have to keep a distance. Gu Xingyin stopped teasing him and nodded obediently. Gu Xingyin's junior high school life went smoothly. She was good-looking, had good grades, and was especially generous to her classmates. Although she was a little arrogant, coupled with her exquisite face, everyone just thought that she had a straightforward personality. Su Qing was not so happy. Although their names differed by only one word, Su Keqing was better than her in every aspect. Even the people she knew from other classes knew that there was a particularly famous Su Keqing in Class 1. Some even mistook her for Su Keqing. The thing that made her the most unhappy was that Su Keqing alone got 80% of the votes in the class committee election. Although she was second, the gap was too big. If that was the case, then so be it. But Su Keqing actually said that she did not sign up for the class after the results were out. She did not want to be the class monitor. Su Qing became the class monitor as she wished, but when she heard the results announced by Teacher Xiao Xiao, she was not happy at all. Su Keqing did not like it and did not want it, so it was her turn. The things that she, Su Qing, wanted should be fought for with her own dignity, not thrown to her like a piece of trash. Su Qing was very sullen as the class monitor. One of Gu Xingyin's fun every day was to see Su Qing suffer. 2 of her fun was to be a foodie desk mate. 3 of her fun was to tease a certain serious uncle. Perhaps because she was still young, Su Qing did not have many bad thoughts. Although she did not like Su Keqing, she did not hate her. And because Su Keqing's personality was too different from the plot, Su Qing did not have the chance to enter Su Keqing's heart. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, was much more direct. She directly expressed her dislike for this classmate whose name was very similar to hers. Perhaps it was because her personality was too simple. If she liked someone, she liked them. If she didn't like them, she didn't like them. Her classmates all liked to be friends with her. Everyone understood why she didn't want to get close to Su Qing. According to Qing Qing's temperament, it would be strange if she liked Su Qing, who had the same name as her. On the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year, Gu Xingyin made great progress in her mission. 2 years could really change many things. Su Keqing, for example, had changed from a delicate doll to a tall girl with delicate eyebrows. Her temperament was still as arrogant and willful, but more and more people were looking at her. Su Qing, for example, had always been gentle and kind. After being the class monitor for a few years, she had gained a good reputation in the class. However, the one who changed the most was the little fatty, Zhang Susu. Since he entered the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year, no one knew what he ate or how he grew. His body suddenly lengthened rapidly, and the fat on his body disappeared. In just half a year, the little fatty had become a handsome and youthful teenager. At the age of 15 or 16, it was the time when love was first awakened. What's more, Zhang Susu had believed his father's words from the beginning, and had some feelings for Gu Xingyin. Chapter 445. Gu Xingyin could sense the change in her deskmate. Zhang Susu's attitude towards her was no longer as natural as before. Sometimes he would stammer when he spoke. Gu Xingyin could feel him sneaking glances at her when she was doing her homework. Sometimes he would blush when he looked at her. The attractiveness of Su Keqing's body was undeniable. Moreover, she had been spoiled by He Junyan too much. The luxurious life she led made her look even more arrogant, just like a little princess who lived high up in an ivory tower. Such a girl was fatally attractive to adolescent boys. Zhang Susu was a very good boy. This was the conclusion that Gu Xingyin came to after being deskmates with him for more than 2 years. Looking at his daily habits and dressing, Gu Xingyin could tell that her deskmate came from a wealthy family. However, she could not see any of the bad habits of a rich family's son. He was not arrogant in the slightest, whether it was towards Gu Xingyin or other classmates. Before he lost weight, Zhang Susu's popularity in Class 1 was surprisingly good. Now that he had become a handsome guy, it was even more obvious. It was obvious that he had feelings for Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin had really treated him as a friend for the past 2 years. It was because she had taken him to heart that she did not want to see him fall deeper and deeper. She was destined to only give her heart to that person. Why should she give others unrealistic hope? When Zhang Susu finally could not help but confess to her, Gu Xingyin firmly rejected him. Zhang Susu was obviously hurt. Gu Xingyin did not leave any room for negotiation. I'm sorry. I've always treated you as my best friend. I don't have any siblings. I've always treated you like my older brother. Her eyes were very sincere. Zhang Susu stared at her for a long time in a daze. Finally, he smiled. He reached out his hand and rubbed the girl's hair. He smiled and said, "I, Zhang Susu, am also a handsome guy. I didn't expect that I would be such a failure in love. My first confession was rejected so coldly. Forget it. Even if I can't be your boyfriend, I can still be your big brother. If I have a girl who's the campus belle, I'll be proud to tell others, right? But today, you have to comfort my wounded heart. Treat me to a meal." Zhang Susu looked at her casually. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "All right. What do you want to eat? Just say the word." Zhang Susu also laughed. "I know you're a rich woman. I have to take advantage of you." There wasn't much awkwardness between the two of them as they walked forward while talking. After the two of them left, a figure in white appeared at the originally empty corner of the stairs. Su Qing looked in the direction where the two of them had left. She had bitten her lower lip so hard that it had lost its color. He really did like her. Su Qing felt the imbalance in her heart rising higher and higher, almost unable to suppress it. Why was it that she, Su Keqing, was able to easily obtain something that she had never been able to obtain? She was even able to discard it like it was a pair of worn-out shoes. Su Keqing was better looking than her, had a better family background than her, and was more popular than her. Su Qing admitted all these. But why was it that the first boy she liked also liked Su Keqing? Su Keqing, everything was Su Keqing. If only Su Keqing had never existed in this world. Chapter 446. Gu Xingyin didn't return home on time after school today. He Junyan didn't see the figure that greeted him the moment he got home from work. He didn't know what to feel. He called the chauffeur who had gone to pick up Gu Xingyin to ask about the situation. Miss said that she's going to treat her classmates to dinner, so she won't be coming home for the time being. Classmates? What classmates? Alarm bells rang in He Junyan's heart. This was the first time that Qingqing hadn't returned home on time for dinner. The chauffeur merely said that he wasn't sure either. At night, Gu Xingyin returned home in a good mood. He Junyan wasn't in the living room. She looked at the time. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. Uncle He would usually be in the living room watching the news at this time. Despite her doubts, she still prepared to return to her room. There was already someone in the room. Uncle He? Gu Xingyin was a little surprised. Ever since she had gotten older, He Junyan had rarely come to her room in order to avoid arousing suspicion. Although she was surprised, she was still very happy. He Junyan's face was tense. It was obvious that he wasn't in a good mood. He stared at Gu Xingyin, who had just entered the room. "I heard from the chauffeur that you're treating your classmates to dinner tonight?" Gu Xingyin didn't understand and nodded. "Is it your desk mate Zhang Susu?" Gu Xingyin nodded again. Looking at the outstanding young lady standing in front of him, He Junyan couldn't describe the feelings in his heart. She was like a treasure that had fallen into his hands. Over the past 5 years, he had polished her bit by bit, until she was the most dazzling person she could be. Yes, she was so outstanding. There would definitely be many people with good taste who would like her. In the future, there would be even more people who would like her. Perhaps one day in the future, a strange man would snatch her away from him. From then on, she would be doted on and loved by others. Her life would have nothing to do with him. How could he tolerate something like that? As He Junyan thought of these possibilities, his eyes turned bloodshot. "Uncle He, what's wrong?" The little girl's worried voice pulled him back from his thoughts. He Junyan raised his head to look at Gu Xingyin, whose head had already grown to his chest. He couldn't help but blurt out, Do you have someone you like? The little girl seemed to be stunned for a moment, apparently caught off guard by this question. Then her face slowly blushed. This faint blush was distributed on her white jade-like skin, and it was astonishingly beautiful. Hee Junyan's heart sank. Looking at her, it was obvious that she had feelings for someone else. Hee Junyan could not describe what he was feeling at that moment. He felt as if half of his heart was being roasted over a fire, tormenting him unbearably. The other half of his heart was frozen in ice, so cold that it pierced his bones. I didn't raise you for you to fall in love early, Sukuching. This was the first time Hee Junyan had called her by her full name. You disappoint me. After saying this, Hee Junyan slammed the door and left without looking back, leaving Gu Xingyin standing in the room in a daze. Gu Xingyin was stunned. System, did he misunderstand something? The system replied, according to normal human thinking, Hee Junyan should think that the host likes Zhang Susu. Gu Xingyin said, he didn't give me a chance to explain myself. Moreover, looking at Hee Junyan's current state, it was obvious that he had no idea what kind of feelings he had for Su Keqing. Even if Gu Xingyin confessed, it probably wouldn't end well. Chapter 447. Hee Junyan sat alone in the study. On the desktop of his computer was a document that his secretary had just sent over from overtime. He stared at it for a while, but he couldn't process a single word. His mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. Qingqing was so pretty and delicate. There must be a lot of young boys who had their eyes on her. His Qingqing was only 15 years old. Her ability to distinguish between right and wrong was not strong enough. What if she got cheated? While he was thinking about this, he had completely forgotten that when he was 15 years old, he was already able to study abroad on his own. No, I have to take precautions. I can't let anything happen to Qingqing. Hee Junyan quickly made a decision. The next morning, Gu Xingyin watched in bewilderment as a certain uncle returned to his usual self. Did he think things through so quickly? Gu Xingyin asked the system. The system didn't understand. Qingqing, I'll have Sister May send you to and from school every day. If you go out in the future, Sister May will follow you, Hee Junyan said. Gu Xingyin was a little unhappy. I'm already 15, Uncle He. I'm not a 5-year-old child anymore. Hee Junyan's expression was extremely gentle. In Uncle He's eyes, my Qingqing will always be a child who will never grow up. This two-faced man always knew what kind of tricks the child he raised would fall for. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else, although she was still a little unhappy. Then came the important part. Qingqing, listen to me. You're still young and not suitable for a relationship. Moreover, you're still a student. You should focus on your studies. Puppy love never ends well. Hee Junyan guided her patiently. Gu Xingyin was amused. She looked at Hee Junyan in confusion. Qingqing isn't in puppy love. Hee Junyan was stunned. Didn't you go on a date with your desk mate Zhang Susu yesterday? Gu Xingyin shook her head. Zhang Susu is my older brother now. He's not my boyfriend. Hee Junyan. Then why did you blush when I asked you that question yesterday? His mood instantly improved. Gu Xingyin was amused when she saw the man's spirited look. The intimate atmosphere between the two of them was once again restored. Su Qing began to approach Gu Xingyin. Just like in the plot, she took the initiative to approach Gu Xingyin. She invited her to do some school things with her, and shared some interesting things or unimportant little secrets with her. However, Gu Xingyin was not as cooperative as she had expected. Their relationship was only average. Qingqing, Haruko said that she knows of a particularly fun place. Let's go have a look after school. The girl who spoke was called Rose. She was the class commissary in charge of studies. She was a very lively and cheerful girl who could get along well with anyone. Gu Xingyin pretended to be in a difficult position and shook her head. I can't. Someone from my family will come and pick me up after school. Everyone in the class knew that Su Keqing came from a well-off family. Her family was strict and her chauffeur drove her to and from school every day. If it were any other time, Rose might not have forced her. However, she remembered Su Qing's words this time. Qingqing never plays with us. This time, you must ask her to come. She grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand. Qingqing, That place is said to be a haunted house. It must be really fun. You've never played with us before. Let's go together. Chapter 448. Gu Xingyin seemed to be annoyed by her and nodded helplessly. After school, I'll tell my family that you guys will come with me, okay? Rose nodded excitedly. Okay. After school that day, other than Gu Xingyin, Su Qing, and Rose, there were 4 other girls who were quite interested in the haunted house. Zhang Susu had wanted to go with them when he heard that they were going to have fun, but Su Qing refused. We girls are going out to have fun. You're a boy, why are you joining us? Gu Xingyin walked out of the school gate and said to Sister Mei, who was waiting at the side, Sister Mei, I'm going to have some fun with my classmates. Let's have a meal together so I won't be going back with you. Sister Mei looked troubled. But Sir said. Gu Xingyin took her hand and said coquettishly, Sister Mei, I'll talk to Uncle He myself. You see, there are so many of us, nothing will happen. Sister Mei said helplessly, Okay. Miss, you must remember to come back early, or Sir will be worried. Gu Xingyin nodded quickly. After settling Sister Mei, Gu Xingyin gestured a victory sign to where the girls were standing and walked briskly towards them. Su Qing looked at her bright smile and thought of the place they were going to soon. She sneered in her heart. I don't know if you can still smile later. Gu Xingyin didn't miss the smile on Su Qing's face. She knew that Su Qing was up to no good, so she wanted to beat her at her own game. They got on the bus. Gu Xingyin really hadn't taken this bus before. Rose looked at her curious face and said exaggeratedly, Qing, you haven't even taken a bus before, have you? Gu Xingyin nodded. Many passengers on the bus had already noticed this girl who didn't fit in with the surrounding environment. A few young girls even looked at the brands she was wearing with shining eyes. If they were not mistaken, many of the clothes she was wearing were famous brands that often appeared in fashion weeks. Any one of them was worth several months of their salary. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, many people were still thinking that it was probably the eldest daughter of a wealthy family who came out to experience life. The place Su Qing mentioned was really far away. They even changed buses and finally arrived at Su Qing's place after more than an hour. Heavens! Jinhua City actually has such a place? The girls all came from well-off families. At the very least, their parents were white-collar workers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to afford the expensive tuition fees of Gu Xingyin's elite school. Even the roads nearby were full of potholes. Low houses of different heights were everywhere, and some of them had even been demolished. No one had cleaned up the garbage around them. The whole place was dirty and messy. Immediately, 2 girls showed a look of disgust. They usually saw high-rise buildings. How could they know that such a place was hidden in a bustling international city? What is this place? Why don't we head back? Since they were already here, how could Su Qing let them go back? She hurriedly comforted them. We're not going in here. Don't forget what we're here for today. Follow me. After she finished speaking, she walked towards a place by herself. The girls looked at each other and chose to follow her. Gu Xingyin took out her phone from her bag, sent a text message to a number, and followed her. Chapter 449. Su Qing brought them to a place. This place was different from the previous place. That place was noisy and dirty, but this place was quiet. There was not even a trace of human habitation. This was a huge cement factory. It seemed that no one had been here for a long time. The whole place revealed a sense of vicissitudes and darkness, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dust. The factory did not have a door. From the outside, it looked dark inside, and they could not see clearly what was inside. In the quiet environment, it was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, waiting for them to walk into the trap. Gu Xingyin looked around and thought that this place indeed had the potential to be a haunted house. Rose was full of confidence before, but she started to feel afraid before they even entered. She pulled Gu Xingyin's sleeve and said, Qing, why don't we not go in? It looks quite scary here. Gu Xingyin did not say anything. Su Qing smiled and took out a flashlight from her bag. We are here to explore a haunted house. If it is not scary at all, how can it be called a haunted house? The rest of the people also gathered their courage and took out the flashlights that they had prepared. Yes, it is boring if it is not scary. Su Qing added faintly. This used to be a very big garment factory. Later, it was said that there was an accident and several people died. Slowly, there were rumors of ghosts. It made people panic. Later, the boss went bankrupt and committed suicide. This place was deserted, and no one dared to buy this place. It has been abandoned. The sky was already dark, and a cold wind blew, as if in response to Su Qing's words, making the few of them shiver. Even the girl who was not afraid of the heavens and earth earlier had a timid look on her face. Gu Xingyin also cooperated and held Rose's arm tightly. Su Qing looked at their faces, and was quite satisfied with the effect that she had caused. Let's go. At this point, no matter what, they had to go in and take a look. The girls steeled their hearts, turned on their flashlights and walked in. Gu Xingyin had already asked the system to check that there were no supernatural events in this place. Instead, the system told her that there were some fun things inside. The factory was bigger than they had imagined, and it was very dark inside. The area that the flashlight could illuminate was very small. All they could see was some abandoned equipment and materials. A girl complained, "It's nothing. I was happy for nothing." Before she could finish her sentence, the girl standing beside Gu Xingyin suddenly let out a shrill scream. Ah! Gu Xingyin found herself being hugged tightly. Everyone knew that in such an environment, people were the most susceptible to environmental contamination. The few of them were already very nervous. Now that they heard her shout, they immediately panicked. Some of the more timid ones also started screaming. They huddled together. Gu Xingyin was the calmest. She grabbed the girl and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" The girl did not dare to raise her head. She just pointed in a direction and said, There's someone there. I saw a person in red just now." If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't find her way by herself, she would have run outside long ago. When she said that, everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. A figure in red, this was a must for a supernatural story. Chapter 450. Gu Xingyin snapped, "Shut up all of you." When she said this, she unconsciously carried a trace of her aura when she was Situjin, which successfully shut the girls up. "I want to see what can be here." Gu Xingyin did not hesitate to take the flashlight and shine it in the direction the girl said. 2 years passed. There was indeed a red shadow. "It's just a discarded piece of clothing." Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. That piece of clothing might have been used as a sample in the past. It was hung there straight, and with the bright red color, it was indeed scary in this environment. "Why don't we go back?" The girl who screamed earlier seemed to be scared out of her wits, and did not have the courage to continue. There were 2 others who also said that it was late, and they should go back. Gu Xingyin received a system prompt at this time. She glanced in the direction where Su Qing was and said, "I also think that this place is a bit strange, let's go back." Su Qing moved her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. At this time, in the darkness, there was suddenly a doo-doo sound, like the sound of high heels hitting the ground. There were no outsiders here except for the few of them. Where did this sound come from? The few of them were even more scared, and the timid one even cried softly in fear. In a place where no one could see, Su Qing's eyes lit up, and she said in a regretful tone, "Well, since you all said so, then let's go back." The few of them had just walked outside when a low female voice sounded in the darkness. "Don't go. Come and accompany me." This voice was very hoarse, like the sound of a pen rubbing on rough paper. It was annoying. However, the people present were not in the mood to consider whether the voice was good or not. No one knew who started it first, but the few of them scattered and ran outside. So this was Su Qing's purpose. Thanks to the system, Gu Xingyin could see that Su Qing was standing there calmly. There was no trace of fear on her face. Presumably, that voice was also designed by her, right? Gu Xingyin had more or less guessed what Su Qing's purpose was. Gu Xingyin pretended to run out in panic. Suddenly, a pair of hands stretched out from behind and grabbed her feet. At the same time, a sinister voice sounded. "Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Come and accompany me." Gu Xingyin sneered. As expected, he was waiting for her here. If she was a normal girl, she might have fainted already. Gu Xingyin sneered. She lifted her leg and stomped on the hand. Ah! The man on the ground screamed. Ghosts can actually scream? Gu Xingyin was so surprised that he said something that made the ghost speechless. She really couldn't speak at this moment. Gu Xingyin didn't show any mercy when he kicked her. She even heard the sound of her own bones breaking. Gu Xingyin didn't stop. She panicked and ran out of the door. She ran out of the door and asked the system, "Did the others run out?" The system replied, "They've all gone out. Only Su Qing and her two friends are still inside." Gu Xingyin looked back at the dark factory and smiled coldly. System, create some virtual scenes and let them have a taste of what it's like to be haunted by ghosts. Su Qing, I hope you'll be satisfied with this gift of mine. Chapter 451. Qingqing, you're out too? Someone called out to her from afar. Gu Xingyin walked over and saw 5 girls gathered together, waiting for her. They were obviously terrified, but they didn't leave. They were waiting for their friends who hadn't come out yet, which made Gu Xingyin feel a sense of warmth in her heart. Is everyone okay? Gu Xingyin asked. She glanced at them. Other than the timid girl who was still crying, everyone else was fine. Well, Su Qing's target was her. The others were at most frightened. Qingqing, have you seen Haruko? Rose asked. Gu Xingyin seemed to have just realized that someone was missing. She shook her head with a panicked expression. No, I ran outside with you guys. Haruko wouldn't. She looked at the monster-like factory building in horror. Her expression was full of panic. Is she still inside? When the girls heard this, they recalled what had just happened and shuddered. Rose was about to cry when she heard this. She was the study committee member. At this moment, she felt that she should do something. She couldn't just leave her classmate inside. But if they were to go in again to look for her, looking at the girls' frightened expressions, even Rose didn't dare to go in again. Why don't we call the police? Gu Xingyin suggested. The girls snapped out of their daze. Yes, yes, yes. Call the police. Gu Xingyin took out her phone and called the police. Then, she called He Junyan. She had actually sent a message to He Junyan earlier, saying that she was here and that if she forgot to call him at 8 o'clock, he could come here to pick her up. It was just 7 o'clock. He Junyan picked up the call. Qingqing. Uncle He. In order to act more convincing, Gu Xingyin started crying the moment she picked up the phone. He Junyan hadn't returned home yet. He was socializing outside. When he heard Gu Xingyin's crying, he panicked. What's wrong, Qingqing? I heard from Sister May that you went out to play with your classmates. Gu Xingyin only cared about crying and didn't say anything. He Junyan left the noisy area and asked directly, Where are you now? Uncle He will come and pick you up. Gu Xingyin gave him an address. He Junyan frowned when he heard this. Why would a few girls go to such a remote place? Be good and find a place to wait for Uncle. Keep your phone connected. Uncle will be here soon. He Junyan pushed open the door of the private room and simply excused himself, saying that he had something urgent to attend to. I say, Mr. He, that's not very kind of you. Everyone is having a good time. Some of the drunkards refused to give up. He Junyan suddenly looked straight at him. The pressure in his eyes made him lose his voice. Everyone, I'm really sorry. I really have something urgent to attend to today. I'll come back another day to ask for forgiveness. Everyone in the private room watched as he walked out of the door. On the other side, when they saw Gu Xingyin calling home, it was as if a certain valve had been turned on. The girls all took out their phones to call home. For a moment, there was a commotion of crying. Gu Xingyin understood them. After being frightened today, it was a good thing that they could cry. The few of them didn't dare to enter the factory again, but they also didn't dare to leave Su Qing alone. They could only watch from afar, hoping that Su Qing would run out on her own in the next moment. However, Gu Xingyin was determined to let Su Qing reap what she sowed this time. She instructed the system to treat her well. How could she let her out so easily? Chapter 452. Half an hour later, there was still no sign of Su Qing coming out. The girls' faces had already darkened. They had already imagined countless scenarios in their minds. Beep, beep. An ear-piercing sound was heard, and a blinding light shone on them. It was a police car. They had never thought that the police were so cute. They were overjoyed and quickly waved in the direction of the police car. The car stopped near them, and a few uniformed police officers got out of the car. Did you call the police? Rose nodded fiercely. Sir, we still have a classmate inside. Hurry up and save her. The police officer's face was grave. What happened? Rose forced herself to calm down, and told them what had happened that day. When she mentioned the factory, she couldn't help but shiver. She looked at the police officer in front of her and pleaded. My classmate hasn't come out for more than half an hour. Hurry up and go see her. The police officer who asked the question was a young man in his 20s. He didn't believe in supernatural things at all and said, You're obviously scaring yourselves. How could there be a female ghost? Your classmate might have left long ago, right? Have you tried to contact her? Rose nodded. I called, but no one picked up. Okay, since you don't dare to go in, just stay here obediently. We'll go in and take a look. 4 policemen came. One of them stayed outside while the other 3 walked in with bright lights. Gu Xingyin had already asked the system to stop when the police arrived. It had been so long, and she had already taught them a lesson. Just as the police entered, another car came from behind. Gu Xingyin recognized it at a glance. It was He Junyan's car. Uncle He Junyan had just opened the car door when a figure jumped into his arms. He quickly pulled her away and looked her up and down. When he saw that Gu Xingyin was just a little panicked and was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. What's wrong? What happened? When Gu Xingyin saw He Junyan, the delicate temperament she had cultivated all these years came out. Tears fell from her eyes and she hugged He Junyan's arm tightly, refusing to let go. Okay. Uncle He is here. Don't be afraid. Be good. Tell me what happened. He Junyan allowed her to hug him and coax her in a gentle voice that he was used to. His expression was so gentle that water could drip from it. His appearance made the girls beside him stare blankly at him. They even forgot to be afraid. They all knew that Qingqing had an uncle who had a good relationship with her. She was even raised by him. All this time, the uncle in their minds was a middle-aged man with a benevolent face and a big belly. Who would have thought that he was such a young and handsome man? Sobbing, Gu Xingyin told He Junyan everything that had happened. He Junyan's expression turned serious. He had thought more than these young ladies. Of course, he didn't believe in ghosts. These girls were probably just scaring themselves. However, Qingqing clearly said that someone had grabbed her feet when she ran out. There were some problems in this. He Junyan lowered his gaze, concealing the cold glint that flashed across his eyes. He didn't say much and continued to gently comfort the little girl in his arms. There were some things that he should not tell her for the time being. Chapter 453. While the 2 of them were talking, the 3 policemen who had entered the warehouse had already come out. Gu Xingyin could tell at a glance that each of the 3 policemen was carrying a person on their backs. Wasn't the one in front being carried by the young policeman Su Qing? The few of them hurriedly ran over. Gu Xingyin also hurried over to the policeman's side. Su Qing, who was lying on the policeman's back, didn't seem to have any major problems. Her face was a little pale, and her eyes were tightly shut. She seemed to have fainted. However, when they saw the people on the back of the 2 policemen, the few of them looked a little strange. They were also 2 girls. Their faces were smeared so messily that it was impossible to tell their faces and ages. Their long hair was loose and they were wearing loose dresses. The people present weren't stupid. Looking at their dressing and thinking about the ghosts they had encountered earlier, they were shocked and could roughly guess what was going on. The 3 policemen didn't look too good either. Originally, when they received a report from the girls saying that there was a ghost, they didn't take it seriously. However, from the looks of it now, there was indeed a ghost. It was just that this ghost was man-made. The leading policeman looked at the few of them. He had originally planned to ask them to go to the police station to make a statement. Gu Xingyin tugged at He Junyan's sleeve and said softly, Uncle He, I want to go home. He Junyan patted her head comfortingly and said to the policeman, "Officer Comrade, I think they were all scared out of their wits today. These few." He pointed at the 3 people who were still unconscious. "It's best to bring them to the hospital for a checkup. They look quite serious. Can I take my child home first?" "Don't worry, tomorrow I will personally send her to the police station to cooperate with you." This was originally against the rules. When the young policeman heard this, he frowned and was about to say something when the older policeman patted him on the shoulder. No problem, no problem. We will send the others home first. Mr. He, you can just take this young lady home first. However, we will have to trouble Mr. He to make a trip tomorrow." He Junyan nodded at the few of them, and got into the car with Gu Xingyin. As for the remaining girls, those whose parents came over were picked up by them, while the rest were sent home. He Junyan brought Gu Xingyin home. After they got out of the car, Gu Xingyin stuck close to He Junyan, tugging on his sleeve and not daring to leave his side. He Junyan was both heartbroken and amused. "That's all you've got, and you dare to go to a haunted house to explore, hmm?" Gu Xingyin looked aggrieved. "I didn't want to go, but they insisted on dragging me along." He Junyan's face hardened. "Speaking of which, I haven't settled the score with you yet. You lied to me about going out for dinner with a few classmates? You're old now, aren't you? You've learned how to lie to me." Gu Xingyin looked at him pitifully. "I was wrong really. Uncle He, I was wrong. I won't lie to you anymore. I'll report everything to you in advance." Her attitude was unbelievably sincere. He Junyan guessed that the young lady was really scared this time. "It's good to learn a lesson," he said hatefully. Seeing the obvious tiredness on Gu Xingyin's face, he patted her head. "Go take a bath and relax. Rest early. I'll call your teacher and ask for leave for you." Gu Xingyin rolled her eyes internally. She had to ask for leave for such a small matter. If she was really that old, she would be spoiled to the heavens. Chapter 454. After saying goodbye to Gu Xingyin, He Junyan returned to his room. However, less than an hour later, there was a knock on his door. He Junyan raised his eyebrows. Only a certain young lady would disturb him at this hour. Sure enough, He Junyan got up and opened the door to see Gu Xingyin standing pitifully at the door, hugging a pillow. She was wearing white pajamas and her hair was slightly messy. She looked like a timid rabbit. Before he could speak, the young lady looked at him pitifully. "Uncle He, I'm so scared that I can't sleep," He Junyan sighed. He realized that he really didn't know what to do with her. He stepped aside to let her in and closed the door. He Junyan looked at her helplessly. "Don't we already know that there are no ghosts?" Gu Xingyin only looked at him pitifully. "But I'm just scared. I'm so scared that I can't sleep." He Junyan got up. "Then I'll take you back to your room and watch you fall asleep, okay?" Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and nodded. The two of them went to Gu Xingyin's room. Gu Xingyin lay back on the bed while He Junyan sat beside her and read a book. However, half an hour later, Gu Xingyin's eyes were still wide open. He Junyan got up and turned off the lights helplessly. Gu Xingyin let out a short scream. "Uncle He, don't go." He Junyan sat on the edge of her bed and quickly reached out to hold her down. "Uncle He won't go. Uncle He will stay here with you." He was just afraid that she wouldn't be able to sleep with the lights on. He felt the young lady slowly calm down after hearing his words, and let out a sigh of relief. Uncle He, I was really scared to death today." After a while, when He Junyan thought that she had fallen asleep, the young lady on the bed suddenly spoke. He Junyan patiently coaxed her gently. "It's all in the past. It's all fake. Uncle He is by your side. Ching, don't be afraid." Gu Xingyin continued. "At that time, I was thinking, what if I suddenly died? Uncle He must be very sad, right?" He Junyan's heart shrank when he heard the word death. Without thinking, he said sternly, "Don't say such inauspicious things." He seemed to realize that his tone was too harsh, so he softened his voice. "With Uncle He around, no one dares to bully Ching." Gu Xingyin nodded. She reached out a hand from under the blanket and grabbed He Junyan's hand. "I can't bear to do that either. I don't want Uncle He to have another Ching by his side and then forget about me." He Junyan could not help but laugh. "That won't happen." Ching Ching is one of a kind. Uncle He guarantees that Ching Ching is the only one. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes in satisfaction. He Junyan could feel the breathing of the person in the room getting lighter and lighter. He called out softly, Ching Ching? There was no response. He wanted to get up and leave, but he found that his hand was tightly held in her hand. Her hand that was grabbing his was so small and soft compared to his own. He Junyan suddenly remembered that young lady from back then. That was the first time she had taken the initiative to get close to him. At that time, she was still so small. When he sat down, she only reached his chest. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. He Junyan sighed and gently pulled Gu Xingyin's hand away. He covered her with the blanket and walked out. Chapter 455. Gu Xingyin slept soundly. When she woke up in the morning, it was already 9 o'clock. After washing up and changing her clothes, she went downstairs and saw He Junyan sitting in the living room. Good morning, Uncle He. Then she saw Sister May and said coquettishly, Sister May, you didn't wake me up today. He Junyan smiled faintly. I told her not to wake you up. You're sleeping so soundly. Breakfast is still warm. Hurry up and finish it. We still have to go to the police station. Gu Xingyin nodded. When the two of them arrived at the police station, they found that two other girls had also arrived. Gu Xingyin was called in alone to record her statement. When she came out, Rose pulled her aside and said worriedly, I wonder how Haruko is doing? Gu Xingyin said, she should be fine. Didn't she say that she was just a little frightened? Rose was still worried. I asked the police. They didn't say anything. She glanced at Gu Xingyin again and suddenly said in a low voice, When I came out of the bathroom earlier, I heard two policemen chatting. They said that someone deliberately led us to the haunted house this time. She looked scared. Luckily, we had more people and called the police in time. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened? The next day, the police called and said that the truth was out. They asked the people involved to go and find out more. The class teacher, Li Xiaoxiao, went with them. Surprisingly, they were not asked to go to the police station. Instead, they went to the hospital. What did you say? You mean that this haunting incident was planned by my student? Or the class teacher, Su Qing, who had always been obedient and good in her eyes? Teacher Li couldn't accept it. The police looked at the class teacher with pity. One of her students planned such an incident to hurt other students. As the class teacher, she was in big trouble. Moreover, according to the confessions of those people, they didn't just do it as a prank. It was a real crime. How could Haruko be such a person? Rose couldn't believe it. This incident was planned by Su Qing. Her goal was to deal with Ching Ching? Rose thought that she must be hallucinating. I want to go in and ask her myself. Gu Xingyin, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. The others followed him into the ward. In order to make it easier to guard, the three of them were arranged to be in the same ward. When the door opened, everyone in the room shrank back as if they had been frightened. Gu Xingyin glanced at the three of them. Their faces were pale and their eyes were red. Not bad. It seemed that the system was indeed very powerful. The system replied, Thank you for your compliment, host. My virtual reality simulation technique is enough to make them unforgettable. Rose looked at the policeman behind her in confusion. What's wrong with them? According to the police, the three of them were there to scare her, but from the looks of it, the three of them were the ones who were overreacting. The policeman smiled helplessly. We don't know either. When the three of them woke up, they kept shouting that there was a ghost. No matter what we said, it was useless. They insisted that it was their retribution for harming others. We didn't even interrogate them, but they confessed everything. Now, he pointed at the three of them. It's better to give them a sedative. Otherwise, the three of them look like they're about to go crazy. Su Qing had been staring at Gu Xingyin since she entered the ward. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.